Taiwan imports 95% of its energy supply. So what happens if China blockades the country, as we've seen in recent military exercises? And what is Taiwan doing to ensure that its sources of power are resilient to rising global instability? With a view on how Europe is handling its energy crises born out of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, we look at how Taiwan can future-proof and supercharge its power supply. I'm Divi Gopalan, and you're watching Connected on TaiwanPlus. So what options does Taiwan have to bolster its energy resilience? To get some insight, we are joined by Tsai Ying Lu, the Director of Energy Resilience at a Taiwan-based think tank with a focus on democracy, society, and emerging technology, or DSET. And for the view from Europe, we have Andrei Covatariu. He's the co-founder of ECERA. He's also the co-chair of the Task Force on Digitalization in Energy at the UN Economic Commission for Europe. Great to have you both on the program. I'm going to start with you, Tsai Ying. Now, I understand that DSET has conducted simulations for what happens if China blockades Taiwan and cuts off its access to imported energy. What was the outcome?
Okay, so based on our simulation of the Taiwan's power consumption and supply scenario under a blockade scenario, which we don't have any more LNG vessels to come in, especially, we use the data of the second day of the Lunar New Year, which typically sees the lowest industrial electricity consumption of the year and offers the closest approximation to wartime conditions in publicly available data. And we saw that during the time of crisis, coal and renewables can cover like 80% of the power demand, in which in turn, Taiwan's power system can suffice the demand for at least 46.2 days, which is very different from the current discussion about only 14 days of supply of LNG, and that Taiwan might suffer from power outage after 14 days. Based on our simulation, actually the days could be extended even longer than 46.2 days if we count in that Thai power companies' power rationing methods or measurements during wartime, which is very likely to happen. So yeah, that's the research work on how do we provide a scientific data-based simulation and to help the public better understand the situation.
Well, I guess we can take some comfort in that that's quite different from the current narrative that we often hear in Taiwan. Now, Andrei, just for some context, now during times of peace, we don't really think much about, or the average person doesn't think much about energy supply or the lack of access to energy. But when Russia turned off the pipes, or Russian energy became untenable in Europe due to the invasion in Ukraine, how prepared were most governments in Europe?
Thank you for having me. I think most governments are not prepared unless the situation and the crisis occur. And that is because obviously being prepared takes time and costs a lot. So for that reason, some governments and some economic blocs are not necessarily fully prepared for this kind of moments. Nevertheless, the European Union in 2022 took some important measures, and it managed to handle the situation on the short and let's say medium run, as well as prepare or plan for the future, for the years to come. On the very short term, the European Commission found alternative solutions, so alternative LNG, mostly LNG natural gas supplies and suppliers, reliable suppliers, so to ensure the short-term security of supply, but then also started to roll out more and more renewables and more clean solutions in the last 3 years, which obviously helped and increased the resilience of the system. But still, there are still things to be done by 2030 and beyond.
Yeah, I want to break down some of that as we go further in the program. And what's apparent is that LNG seems to be the fallback, even here in Taiwan, which reduced its dependency on coal over the past 2 decades. Now, to fill the gap, it's raised imports of natural gas while building up its indigenous renewables. So where does Taiwan get its natural gas from? Well, Australia is the largest contributor at 38%, followed by Qatar's 25%, while the US supplies around 10%. Now, Tsai Ying, Taiwan's state-run CPC Corp is now looking to buy more natural gas from U.S.'s Alaska Gas Line Development Corporation, and it's even shown interest in extraction. Does it look like LNG stockpiling could be a strategy to secure Taiwan's future energy?
Yeah, sure. So I think this needs to be explained, for why Taiwan is expanding its procurement for LNG in long term, and also why it targeted with the U.S. LNG, right? So the first, Taiwan is actually, like you said, that Taiwan is currently dependent on LNG and also the gas-fired generators in the current energy mix. And to the 2050, actually, we will expect a certain, approximately the same amount that we have already dependent on, like in this year. So we can see there is a continuity of this LNG dependence in the future. So how do we secure, and also to diversify the import sources for these LNG demand? So the U.S. Alaska's project is one of the examples, because this is not only a decision based on to how to decrease the trade surplus between Taiwan and the U.S., but also it is also based on two major reasons. So one is for Taiwan's renewable transition, which was still, like I said, dependent on LNG supports in the meantime. And the second reason is for energy security reasons. So according to based on the Alaska's characteristic, we will have a shorter delivery time for LNG from Alaska, which could be a better ideal options of when it comes to diversifying options.
Right. Andrei, I believe Europe also has looked to the U.S. for LNG supplies as a stopgap after it revealed that Europe's dependence on Russia for its energy needs. But is there more of a long-term strategy in place?
It is, and it has been looking at the U.S. and also some other suppliers in the Middle East, Qatar, for instance. We have secured some LNG contracts on the medium and long term, I would say. But maybe that's not enough given the reliance that the European Union has on natural gas for the two reasons mentioned beforehand. One is security of supply, and then also reliability, or if you want a sort of a backup for this energy transition to renewable and variable generation. Going forward, the European Union looks, first of all, into phasing out completely the Russian gas that still flows to Europe. And there's still some Russian gas flowing through Europe, especially LNG, but also some pipeline gas as well. So it has a plan to phase out that by 2027 and to replace it as much as possible with alternative suppliers, reliable suppliers, obviously. And the US is once again one of the partners that is considered for different projects and different, let's say, cooperation agreements in that sense. And I believe that Washington is also looking, or the presidential administration is also looking into increasing LNG transport or exports to Europe. So in that sense, we may see a cooperation going forward in the years and decades to come.
Now, Andrei, given the fact that Taiwan imports 95% of its energy, and a lot of that is not done through pipelines, it's overseas transport, which makes Taiwan quite vulnerable in that sense. What do you think should be the key takeaway from what Europe has learned since the Ukraine war erupted?
I think that's a very good question, and it's not a very straightforward answer, if you ask me. So, of course, geography counts a lot, and the capacity of importing and exporting and the vulnerabilities derived from geography, the geographical context matters significantly. So, in that sense, of course, transitioning to local solutions, so clean and renewable solutions on the ground, would tremendously help the economy over there. But then, of course, you also need reliability of energy, and then also this backup options for variable transition. So in that sense, of course, LNG will be needed. Once again, securing long-term contracts with reliable partners is a first step in that direction. But also, you also mentioned stockpiling, which could also serve Of course, we may need to discuss about infrastructure and development in that sense and investment in that sense, of course. But these are the ingredients, if you want, that would eventually serve the purpose and would secure the energy supply for Taiwan.
So Tsai Ying, if I can get you to weigh on that and tell us what Taiwan is already considering and what you think it should be considering, given what Andrei said.
Yeah, I think Andrei puts out a very good example of what Taiwan can learn from the European experiences. So right now, Taiwan is going to its renewable transition. So having more renewables to be interconnected with the grid, that's definitely one of the major commitment and also efforts to secure Taiwan's energy security in the long term. But I do feel like Taiwan also requires or needs to have this flexibility in terms of how to better balance the spot markets of our LNG procurement and also in coordination with long-term contracts with the reliable partners, like Andrei said. So right now, Taiwan has its contracts being signed with Australia and also Qatar, and also the US ranked as at the third place for our major import countries for our LNG. But considering the recent Middle East crisis, we can see that how do we balance these percentage between these three major import countries, and also to make it more flexible for Taiwan to be able to to manage any kind of interruptions or the contingency issues that happen not only in the Taiwan Strait but also all the countries to manage this risk. I think this is very essential.
Andrei?
I think a measure that would also complement everything that we have discussed is also on the demand side. So obviously looking at how efficient demand can become in the years to come, looking into more energy efficiency measures or measures that would decrease consumption or match, let's say, the demand with this variable generation, increasingly variable generation would also help tremendously, and implicitly it will increase the level of energy security in the country. So there's the supply aspect that is critical, actually, and policy makers look into that first and foremost. But we also need to consider or to focus also on the demand side and the energy efficiency measures that are available.
Andrei, I understand you specialize, I'm bringing in another aspect of this. You specialize in digitalization of energy. Firstly, can you explain what that is and how that can help in supply crunches?
That is indeed one of my focus areas, and we believe that this twin transition, so both the digital and the energy transition, have a tremendous potential going forward. Everything these days is related to data and how data can inform decisions, both on the policymaker side as well as on the business side, as well as, of course, the consumer's level. So understanding, acquiring data from the energy systems through different sensors, platforms, or tools will make this decisions at every level better informed, better. We would be able to better anticipate the results and to measure the results, and for that reason, once again, energy security will increase. We are talking more about integration of renewables, better integration of renewables into this flexible, ideally more and more flexible demand. We are discussing about improved resilience of grids, as well as preventive maintenance that, once again, is only going to improve the security aspect of the energy system.
And speaking of resilience of grids, what's the picture here in Taiwan?
Okay, so I would say to add some perspectives and points on what Andrei just said about the digitalization of the smart and also the grid system. I would say the TPC company has right now, with more renewables being penetrated to the grid, they are right now to have this coordinate the team to have this day ahead forecast and to better coordinate the renewables and the conventional generators. That these efforts has been already undergone for several years for Taiwan company to better balance the grid as well. And on the other hand, I think Taiwan's current grid enhancement projects is already another major goal is to diversify the power grid, not because right now Taiwan depends on the centralized power grid that only have several high voltage transmission lines, which will be very vulnerable to any kind of like incidents or happened on the substations that will cause a cross-regional blackout. So right now, Taiwanese government and also the Thai Power Company has already began this power grid enhancement project since 2022, and now we see that with more renewables being interconnected with grid, all kind of facilities and also equipment need to be replaced and also to be equipped on the power grid. So I would say this is right now Taiwan's current plan for enhancing its grid.
Tsai Ying, nuclear power was once quite a substantial provider of energy here in Taiwan, but the last nuclear plant was decommissioned in just this past May in 2025. Is that being seen as an option at all in the future?
You mean to restarting it?
Well, yeah, given that anything we do now, it's going to be a slow kind of process. And we see our industries just needing energy quickly and right now.
So I think I will break down this into two parts. So one is that now we have been phasing our nuclear power plant since the early 2000s. So we have this policy to call this a nuclear-free homeland. And after some period of time, we have already phased out our first and the second nuclear power plants with, all these open yard, the switching yard, and also the nuclear reactor that have already been decommissioned. So it is very difficult to imagine that they will be restarted very soon in the near future. At least you need to run a safety concept test for these kind of facilities for the 3 to 5 years. So I don't see this has any possibility to restarting the first and the second one. But the third one, we just recently phased out in last May. The second unit of the third nuclear power plant is that this is under the debate, and we will soon have our referendum on August 23rd on this issue to whether or not we can actually restart it. But like I said, to restart it, you have to run these safety tests and also to make sure everything is, using the most advanced technology, and also you have to do all these geological survey and to test it again. So it will take 3 to 5 years to complete that. So and the referendum, the validity of the referendum result, no matter what the result is, it only lasts like 2 years. Mm-hmm. So how do we imagine restarting these nuclear power plants to be feasible or not? I think it is still way to see, but I would say it will be very challenging.
Andrei, France is a leader in nuclear power. In fact, 70% of its energy comes from nuclear sources. So how much of a conversation is there in Europe as data centers are popping up and with the tech boom? How much conversation is there about ramping up nuclear power in Europe?
I think the European Union has never been a declared or a formal fan of nuclear generation. Nuclear has always been, and in my view will always be, a domestic-led decision. Countries independently go ahead with a nuclear power agenda depending on their previous experience on the social acceptance of the technology and so on and so forth. But there is a revival, and I believe that's happening globally, a revival when it comes to nuclear power. We are seeing that both at the utility scale generators, so big units of nuclear power, as well as this advanced small modular reactors that are still in the incipient phase, but research and development is being invested into that. Coming back to your point, I think coupling data centers with nuclear is more of a North American thing, and that is because there's once again a heritage when it comes to nuclear development in the US, and it's seeing this expansion over the last few years. But nevertheless, I do believe that nuclear is part of the solution, especially for geographies in which that can be deployed and accommodated, which may not be the case for everyone, once again.
How confident are you in your country's energy supply, or are you also living with the possibility of blackouts? Let us know in the comments and click through to hear how the world is struggling to power the energy-hungry tech industry and what can be done about it. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell for more stories on tech and business from Taiwan.